So the uncertainty is when you just say, "Oh, with my degree alone, I want to go and work as an engineer." It doesn't work like that. You need to do a certain sort of a proof that I've done this alongside with my degree, therefore I can go in this direction. So that then gives you, let's say, higher chances of going into a particular career.
Greetings, viewers. Welcome back to our channel. It's your host, Eve, and I'm here with.
Trito Kuzopamezai.
Okay, so Trito, tell us about yourself.
Well, as you can see, I'm a male, right? And I'm a student of science. So I'm from Zimbabwe, and I'm still within my 20s.
Okay. Tell us about what you are currently doing right now, your studies.
Oh, I'm currently studying towards my master's, which I'll be finishing soon. So I'm in my second year of master's, and I'm also working at the same time.
Masters in physics.
Yes, doing a master's in physics. Yeah.
Right. So, what was your inspiration behind physics? Because it's actually rare to find someone studying physics.
Well, the inspiration is that I wouldn't say there was necessarily an inspiration. It was just fate. So I just happened to finish my matric, and during the process of applying for universities, I was just applying randomly at different universities. So initially, I wanted to do engineering or law because I was very interested in many subjects, engineering, law, biology, medicine, anything of that nature. Then I just stumbled upon physics by chance. And then I just saw, oh, there's this course in physics, and I thought I was very good in physics. So I thought, you know what, why not just apply? And then I applied in physics, and other universities eventually accepted me. But by the time I got those acceptances, I was already doing physics. So I was like, I mean, it's also something I like. I've got interest in that science, so why not? And I just went ahead with doing physics. But I wouldn't say it's something that I was thinking about constantly before I started doing it. It just happened to be the case then. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about physics, because I'm really curious. What is physics like? What do you do?
Physics is very broad. So I do what's called experimental physics, and generally physics is divided into two different components. There's theoretical physics and there's experimental physics. So experimental physics is the type of physics you do that you often go into labs and you do experiments. And then there's theoretical physics, which is more of thought based. So it's just something you do because you are inspired or you want to learn more about the universe. So as you probably know, there are people who speak about the universe having come from what's called the Big Bang Theory. Ever heard about that?
Yes.
So the Big Bang Theory is just a concept of saying the universe must have begun some 14 something billion years ago after a spark within the universe. So anyone who's curious tends to study physics to understand the fundamentals upon which the universe is built. So it's that, and then of course there's much more all subjects that you can think of, whether it's chemistry, whether it's biology, any type of science that you can think of to some degree has got its source coming from physics. You might even say mathematics itself has a source which comes from physics. So there are many big mathematical concepts which have been, let's say, conjured from thoughts within physics. So it's very broad. You wouldn't say it's just about, perhaps, let's say, what you probably are familiar with, Newton's law of motion. It's not just about studying that. It's about asking the big questions. What are we? Where do we come from? What makes us unique? Is there more life out there in the universe? What else is there? So questions like, does the sun rotate around the earth? So there was a time in the past where there was a guy called Galileo Galilei who was actually murdered, or let's say jailed rather, because he came up with this notion of saying, no, it's not the earth, or it's not the sun which goes around the sun. So people were believing in the Bible, and anyone who comes with the thought that opposes what the church was saying, and back in the day, the church, it always had a lot of power, right? So people believed that the earth was the center of the universe, so everything else rotated around the earth, until a guy came up and said, no, it's actually the opposite. There's actually the sun, which is just the center, and we rotate around the sun. And that was like a radical thought. So he was put into prison, eventually died a miserable death. So it's all those kind of questions that physics can answer, but usually the radical things, the things that people don't necessarily want to believe initially.
Okay. So what are the possible career paths that one can follow after studying physics?
Well, they are broad as much as physics itself is broad. So I know of individuals who have studied physics who went on to do actuarial science. I know people who have done physics who went on to become investment bankers, risk analysts. Um, there are people who study physics and simply go into medicine, engineering, let's say aerospace engineering. Um, so it's very broad. It's yeah, it's a broad subject. So it depends on what you are studying, what is your interest, and whether or not you can fill a particular role. For example, even software development. I know of students who are currently doing their honors who are already doing um, let's call it data sciences or software development for different companies. So some of them are web developers. So it's a very broad career with so many opportunities. It just depends on, of course, the competition that's out there and whether or not you've got the minimum skills. So it gives you the minimum skills, and then you are then the one who gets on to apply, let's call it the thought process, in other different smaller courses that then accumulate to lead you into a particular career.
Yeah, that's right. So, what are the challenges that you might have faced starting with?
Well, first of all, physics is difficult. There's no way you can water that down. Right? It's a difficult subject. It needs you to be dedicated. And you find that you start physics in a typical university course with like 500, 700 students, right? Many of them are probably not majors in physics. Maybe people are just doing something like zoology. People are just doing something like biology or biochemistry where they just need the basics of physics. So you find that in the first year class, you're like 500 students. By the time you go to the second class, you've dropped down to like 80. By the time you go into the third year, you've even dropped down further. You're like maybe 20, maximum 26 or even less. And even worse, when you go to honors, you're probably like 2 or 3 students, right? Or sometimes even one, depending on the university, of course. And by the time you get to masters, you're probably the only guy left, or maybe it's you and some other 3 students or something along those lines. So it's just a matter of the fact of saying that many people are leaving the course. That in itself is difficult. When you've got 15 students along with yourself studying the same course, you've got motivation and thinking, oh, at least people are there. They've still got this kind of joy about this particular subject. So the moment you see people leaving, that's already something that can also bring down your self motivation. And the different courses that you also do, which are very difficult, such as, for example, quantum mechanics. You always hear people talking about how difficult those subjects are, right? And then, of course, your normal mathematics subject. So it's not just you studying physics and thinking, oh, that's it. So there's physics that you have to contend with, but you must also think about other subjects that go along with that, like the basics, the language of physics, which is mathematics. So you also have to have a great understanding of mathematics. So those are all the other difficulties that you might have, and the fact that you don't have to sleep, right? So I think you've probably seen memes online where I think I've seen one where there's like it was like a big building, and there's probably like an in window which was open, and that window in light where the other windows were off, and there was a caption which says it's probably physics student studying, right? So it means that people are always constantly studying. So it's the notion of having to study too much for different subjects, which are all very difficult in their own right. So stuff along with that, those are, I would say, are the difficulties in studying physics.
Right. So, what are the subject requirements and the marks?
Well, in what aspect are you talking about? From high school?
Yes, from high school.
I think different requirements are given by different universities. So let's say you're coming from University of Cape Town. Generally, the required marks for that one, for example, UCT, would require you to have something like 70% minimum or average for all your subjects. Uh, and then if you're going to go into the mainstream, maybe you might need even an 80% minimum for both physics and everything else, and pretty much the average, right? But then there are some universities where there's what's called an extended program. So an extended program is if you have let's say at least 70% in either physics or maths, and at least a 60 in another subject, you would have to first go through what's called an extended year program. So the first year, you're doing subjects such as like extended algebra. In its extended version, you get good introduction to calculus before you start doing calculus, and many of those other smaller subjects, right? And then you also learn basics of Excel, Microsoft Word, computer sciences, maybe. So you do all those smaller subjects. Then afterwards, you then go to the higher subjects. So because of that, you don't really need to have had maybe, let's say, 80% or anything like that. But if you're gonna go into it like the mainstream, then the minimum you need for both math and physics is like a 70%.
All right. So, as a physics student, how do you manage your daily life and your education?
Well, it's not about managing your life as a physics student or as an architecture student or as an engineering student. It's just how do you manage your life in general. And anyone who's going to be a productive person needs to have a way that they manage their lives. You need to have a time where you're saying, I'm dedicated to studying. And when you do that, you must definitely do that, right? I mean, nowadays we're in the age of the digital age where people are usually on their WhatsApps, TikTok. So you need to have a way that you can pretty much curb the time that you spend on things like that. Um, at some point, I've tried using timetables, which I say, okay, I'm going to be starting from this time to that time. But I mean, my lifestyle is not something which allows me to have a particular timetable. We say, oh, every single day I'll be starting from 8 to 7 or 8 to 9. Right? It doesn't work like that. However, it's more of I could just wake up one day and I feel like I want to study and I study. Once I study, I find that after 6 hours I've been studying, or after 4 hours I've been studying, or something along those lines. I would say I always hate the timetable. So it just depends on who you are. If you're an organized person, I suspect you probably have a timetable. But if you're probably like myself, I probably wouldn't have a timetable. I just know that I need to study, and there's a motivation, which is that I need to get a certain amount of marks. Well, that was the case when I was still doing my undergraduate honors. But now that I'm at masters, well, there are no marks. There's no one who's going to be marking your stuff. You just have to study and write your thesis or whatever it is. So there wouldn't be a timetable that you have to follow. It's just you knowing that at this particular time I must accomplish such an amount of work, have your meetings with your supervisors. But I wouldn't say there's a particular recipe to managing your time as a physics student. You just need to know that I have a goal. With my goal, how much time must I spend on maybe studying and therefore implementing it.
Okay. All right. So for students that are looking right now and they want to go for physics, what would you tell them?
You are making the best choice of your life. Why do I say that? Because physics itself, I mean, obviously you need to have had love for that particular subject. But also, like I said, there are the avenues that you can go within once you have done your physics are so many. I know of people who have said, I've been studying physics, I don't even know where I'm going because it's uncertain. Unlike, for example, someone who's studying engineering, you're 100% sure once I finish engineering, maybe I'm doing mechanical engineering, the type of job I'm going to be looking for mainly is going to be mechanical engineering related type of job. So you've got some type of direction of where you want to go. If you're doing biology, let's say for example you're doing medicine, you know exactly it's medicine related. I'm going to be looking for hospitals to find my jobs. But if you're studying physics, you're uncertain in the sense that you do not know which exactly is the direction you want to go. So because of that, people tend to face uncertainties and start to think it's a useless degree per se. But I think once you know that I'm going to be studying physics, of course you gain all the skills, all the critical thinking that's required. Then you should yourself determine that I want to either go work into software related types of courses. And because of that, it means that you need to sort of like take, of course, I think physics itself, when I was doing it, we did computer sciences, which was a minor. And then I did at honors some subject which was called computational physics, which requires you to do a lot of programming, coding. We've learned quite a lot of programming languages. But that's not enough for you to go and apply in the industry. What you then need is, like, for example, 1 or 2 certificates. In fact, say, for example, I want to go into web development. And those are certificates you can get online at different courses, like this one which is called Harvard CS50. And that's like a course where you just learn how to do basic, in fact, I think they start from the fundamentals of web development and many other type of courses. So maybe looking to something like that, having it as a certificate alongside with a degree in physics, that then gives you a direction that I want to go into, for example, web development related types of jobs. If you are to go into engineering, well, I suspect that you probably might need to do a side certificate as well, but those are things that you can do within 6 months or less than that. So the uncertainty is when you just say, "Oh, with my degree alone, I want to go and work as an engineer." It doesn't work like that. You need to do a certain sort of a proof that I've done this alongside with my degree, therefore I can go in this direction. So that then gives you, let's say, higher chances of going into a particular career. But it's still a good choice to study physics because it opens many avenues.
Right. Any final words or advice you'd like to give them?
Um, I don't really have much to say, but I can say that I think a person who knows their strengths and weaknesses is a person who probably is likely to make it into the world. So I think it's very important for you to be honest with yourself. That I think I'm good within this particular let's say, aspect of studying, and therefore I'm going to pursue it. It does not have to be sciences. People tend to lie and say only sciences will land you a job, right? So it's not only sciences, it's not only engineering that can land you a job. It's knowing your weaknesses, your strengths, and maximizing, right, on whatever field that you decide to work on, whether it's economics, whether it's agriculture, whatever it is that makes sense to you, maximizing within that particular field, and pretty much being the cream of the crop, right? If you can do that, I think you probably will be guaranteed a certain level of success.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing all that, and thank you guys for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Bye.